Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and we're back for another flagship podcast, and it feels like forever, really, since we've had one of these, because time as a Celtic fan is one of the most distorted things known to man. Everything goes by in the flash of an eye and takes an eternity, all at the same time. But we're back, and there's plenty of meat on the bones, plenty of fat to chew over this week, and back on the channel again, we've got Josh from the Celts Are Here website and everything else. Josh, good to see you, mate.
Yeah, good to be back. Been away for a couple of weeks, but missed a couple of big news items, but looking forward to discussing them today.
Yeah, should be good, man. And for the first time on the channel, we've got a new face on. It's not Jackson Irvine, it's Aiden, the Aussie boy. Aiden, good to see you, mate.
Thanks for having me on, Quinny and Josh. I'm so happy to be here today. I think Celtic YouTube, we need to have so many clubs as possible, and I hope I can just be a tribute to the Celts Are Here channel.
That's it, man. Well, it's good. There's lots of stuff for us to get stuck into, Aidan. And really glad you could join me and Josh for this one today, because there's lots of stuff that's been moving, maybe over the last couple of days a bit quicker. The dust is kind of settled, eh? We all know the manager's coming in. We all know it's Brendan. We've all kind of had our early coming to terms with it period, I think. We're all kind of had that 48 hours or so, whatever it might have been. But it's been pretty big news, and the initial reactions across like the supporters, the club, the media. Like, for the most part, I think like everyone is trying to be quite unified, because as Celtic fans, like, we always stand by the manager, we always stand by the club for the most part. But there has been, little sections of divide and discontent and whatever. And it's one of those ones where, for me, I think, the sooner we can put some of this stuff past us or behind us and start moving forward with exciting transfers, thinking about the Champions League, etc., the better. When you guys have seen this stuff going around, I'll throw it to you first, Aidan. Aidan's channel is linked in the description of the video, so if you want to check that out for full details down there. There's also on the channel at the moment, if you check out Twitter and everything as well, we're doing a shirt giveaway, so check out Facebook and Twitter for all that good stuff as well. What's your kind of take on, the divide, any divide there may or may not be with the fans and just Rodgers' return in general?
Well, Quinny, I think I saw this post on Instagram the other day, and I can't quote exactly what Celtic page it was, but it perfectly summed up the situation. If Rangers can imagine that they never got liquidated in 2012, we can imagine Rodgers never left us back in 2017. So I think in all honesty, jokes aside, Celtic embodies being a family, If you're Celtic for life. And you know what? It happened in the past. Shit happens, okay? Rodgers left us middle of the season, probably the worst time to do so. But he's come back. He is here for a fresh start. And I think it's on us as the fans to embrace him, to let go of the past, because in all honesty, it's really childish in my eyes to be like, oh no, he left us. He burned those bridges. He could never come back, because it's just so immature, I think we as fans need to embrace him. We need to move on, because there are exciting times ahead for Celtic as a club. When Rodgers came, we weren't in the best of shape. There wasn't really too much depth. The squad was okay. I think we had won 4 or 5 titles already in a row. And you look at the squad now, it's impeccable. Right. So I think all he has to do is come here, get results, and anyone who still is a doubter or still is hating on the decision, that should be enough to change their mind. If not, then I don't know if they can call themselves a Celtic fan.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Initially, I can't lie, I was against it, a bit of my bitter side coming through, but I kind of re-educated myself, looked at all the positives of the appointment. I think the positives certainly outweigh the negatives. Obviously, if you're getting a manager in who's won 7 trophies out of 7 when he's been in Scotland before, 2 top 5 finishes, or 2 5th place finishes, I believe it was, with Leicester in the Premier League, an FA Cup win with Leicester, Community Shield win with Leicester. We've got to remember, they're not the biggest side, despite obviously their title win. I think it was 2015, 2016. Leicester are not a big side, and the fact Brendan Rodgers has managed to go in there and do that with them, albeit his last season wasn't the greatest, is amazing. He's a top manager. He's going to get the respect of those players. And like you said there, Aidan, when he came in I think 2016, you look at the players that were in that Celtic squad, I think his first lineup consisted of players like Sadie Yanko, Owen O'Connell was kicking about, players like that. And you look at the guys we've got now, Alistair Johnston at right back instead of Sadie Yanko. We've got the likes of Kyogo, Hatate, O'Reilly, Maeda, Jota. The squad is in absolutely terrific shape going into this season. And I'm very, very excited to see what a top-class manager and a Celtic man as well. That's crucial. He knows the club. He's a Celtic fan at heart. He's even said that in interviews before, and now he's back, and I'm very excited to see what Brendan can do with this squad.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things I think about in terms of, this time versus last time, the quality of the squad. Like you summed up perfectly, Aidan, impeccable. Like if you were to lay it out on, a depth chart and, positions on the pitch and all the rest of it, like, we are stacked. And, so it's a really exciting time for somebody like Brendan to be coming back in, because as much as like, it's the whole going back kind of thing, with somebody coming in for a second stint, but there is like truly at this particular time, there is no one better to come in, because there's no teething process. That there's not going to be any of that figuring out how to manage this, the league and the cups and all the other stuff. He's kind of done it already, and it's just picking back up where he left off. And the success he had in England, because you can call it a success quite easily, like you say. Like obviously Leicester now find himself in the Championship, and maybe don't entirely thank Brendan for everything when he was there, but like, it's one of those ones where, to make a wee bit of a joke of the situation, Brendan, for him to be considered maybe, I don't know, let's just say the most important Northern Irishman in football, he has to outdo Martin O'Neill by winning a cup with Leicester and then getting Celtic to a European final. So there's maybe another little, he's been laid out, maybe another wee omen there or something. So and for me, a lot of the Green Brigade, who is like a really strong force in Celtic Park, is a real big fan community. It's obviously like one of the most important in terms of visibility and, influence fan groups that are out there. And, when this appointment get put out, they're the ones that have kind of made the line in the sand divide on social media and everything, with the reposting of the banner and all that kind of stuff. And it feels like you say, as fans, like, we definitely, in the Green Brigade, have been brilliant champions of this kind of stuff in terms of standing up for, like, make sure the club doesn't appoint people in really powerful positions that they shouldn't, and many other things over the years. And, for all that stuff, so I don't think you can thank them enough for the commitment and the effort they put in. But particularly with a lot of the sentiment that I see coming out from that section of the Celtic fans, as well as just Celtic fans, period, we all see Celtic as a European juggernaut, as a European titan. We are a team that should be on Champions League stage every season, and everyone should fear playing us. That's the way we all agree Celtic should be seen. And we've been away from that for, let's just call it 10 years to be kind, right? And never before have we been on the cusp of not even just getting that status back, but even like surpassing it and kicking on a wee bit, So I found it a bit disappointing to see that being like a public kind of thing that came out. Like they went out their way to kind of put that back out there, because like, if we're all together on this, Rodgers has got this squad. Rodgers comes back in. We've retained a lot of that core staff that I was really worried about us losing as well. Mm. That kind of identity within the club that's been building for the last 15 years. Then really, like, we could really spill over the top here in a really big way if everyone pulls in the one direction. The club go and sign players that enhance this impeccable squad, and we're not like going, right, okay, we can make do with Beaton for one more year. And, do you know what? James Forrest has come onto a real game all of a sudden. We could probably get by with James Forrest now. And Izagiri, he's no past it. He could get another season out of Izagiri, We're not playing any of those games anymore, really, are we? It's like everyone in the squad is a star, and like, let's just go for it proper,
It's true. It's very true. I think regardless if, some of the stars will say of the team who are rumored to go, I'll be devastated, right? If Kyogo goes, like, I won't come out of my room for a whole day. I'll be devo, right? But you look at the squad we have, I'll admit it, not the biggest fan of O. I know a lot of people love him. I'm not. I think he's quite brash, but I think bringing in maybe a new manager in Rodgers, we might be able to see him refine his talents, bring in another striker. It's like you said, this squad we have, it's so good. And there is the argument, I'm aware of the argument, and I have brought this up I've spoken about it at length with my dad. We both agree that the squad Rodgers is inheriting is an Ange squad. Those players he's brought in have been to suit his play style. And there is the argument, will it work for Rodgers? Will Rodgers be able to keep these players at their best? You look at players like Greg Taylor. He was naff, all right? He was absolutely naff before Ange. Ange moves him to an inverted fullback. We strike gold, you know. If Rodgers moves him back to the wing and as an overlapping wide fullback, is that gonna tarnish what Taylor's done? Is he gonna go back to being, you know, an average player at best, a Diego Laxalt, we'll say, you know? And I'm really curious more than anything, but it is certainly an argument, and I do understand where people come from with this, but we'll have to wait and see. I think it's a matter of only time will tell on this.
I think as well with the squad thing, you could obviously go devil's advocate at that. You're saying obviously Taylor as a wing back may not do well, but you look at guys like maybe Alessandro Bernabé. He didn't do too well under Ange. I think we'd all admit he wasn't really impressive going into that inverted role. Didn't look too comfortable sometimes. But maybe under Rodgers, if he goes to the wing back, that's where he could excel, because we know that's one of his strengths, getting up and down the wing, putting balls into the box. But just going back to the Green Brigade thing with the sort of unity around the club, I think under Ange Postecoglou, there was that sense of everyone, we're all on this journey together, we're all behind the manager, we're all going for a win. And I think that showed the success we had under Ange, that when everyone's all together, what we can achieve. And I think everyone should get together under Rodgers, because we've seen what we can do when we do that. So, but I think, yeah, going back to you, Aidan, with the players, I think there's certain players as well who might not succeed under Brendan's play style, but those who didn't succeed under Ange's play style could do under Brendan. Another one, Sead Haksabanovic. Obviously, he loves cutting inside in that left wing. We've seen what Scott Sinclair done when he was done that under Rodgers, so could see what maybe Sead could come up with, maybe even in a number 10 role, because that's where he likes to play. But excited to see what we can do with some of our squad under Brendan Rodgers.
I think Greg Taylor's one of the ones that I'm worried about, because in terms of like the Rodgers change from Ange, Aidan and Josh, and I think as well, even with both of them, like I love Taylor. I've loved Taylor for the last like season and a half or something. I think he's been incredible, very much a huge part of the team, and excellent. And I see a lot of potential in Bernabé as well. But see the thought of them in our defensive third backtracking against Champions League wingers gives me the fear. Both of them, you know, I don't think either of them really give me that much confidence compared to Alistair Johnston on the other side, for example. If you know what I mean. So left back could be one of those sneaky positions where, you know, we come into this summer thinking we are, you know, under Ange locked. We've got two good options and 1.5 maybe, depending on who you talk to, you know. But this might be that definitely might be a position that changes. One person that I did think about that might be able to kick on, if you're to do the whole, you know, look at what happened last time and whatever, is Rogic really come on to a great game under Ange, and, you know, O'Reilly, you know, if he was going to play behind, you know, whoever the striker is, probably Kyogo at this stage, you know, like O'Reilly in that kind of Rogic role in a Rodgers team could be unreal, because O'Reilly for me is one of the best prospects in the team.
Yeah, I agree, O'Reilly. I think maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but on O'Reilly, I thought he was somewhat underwhelming this season. Maybe it was, I don't know why. I think last year, in the back end of last year, when he came onto the scene and he was sort of the understudy to Rogic, I thought I saw a lot of promising signs. This season, I think he tried to do something, maybe tried to do too much. And it's a good point. My dad actually brought me to this. He's always trying to find, you know, like that extra flashy pass rather than the simple option, you know, flashy touch here and there. And it's all good and well. Like, don't get me wrong, exciting football. It's great to see when it's Celtic, but I think that's something, and I'll compare him with Aaron Moy. Aaron Moy slotted into that 10 role this season, and I thought he was, when he was fit after that World Cup, I thought he was phenomenal. I thought he was so simple, but he was so incredible. And I think that's something Matt O'Reilly might be able to adjust in his game under Rodgers, because 100% he's got the potential. You know, we hear the rumours. Clubs in Germany, Brighton want him. Brighton are going into Europe next season. You know, they're not a small English club at the moment. Well, small in stature, but not in talent. So with O'Reilly, I think certainly he could be amazing, but I think we need to see him doing a lot less than I think he intends to do as a player. Maybe that's unpopular though.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair, to be fair. He's not scored as many as he did last season, I don't think. I'm not entirely sure in the stats specifically, but I think that goal scoring part of his game has left him a bit. Nevertheless, he did assist quite a few. I think he got the most assists in the league, which is quite good when you consider, obviously, as well, you mentioned Aaron Moy. He was kind of competing for that spot. He was kicked out of the team by a bit by Aaron Moy at one point. I thought he was excellent last season. He was one of my favourite players because where I sat at Celtic Park in my stand, no one, the row in front of me and the row behind me, everyone didn't like Aaron Moy. When he signed, I backed him. I was like, he's going to do really well for us. And then he starts scoring and I'm going mental. I'm like, see, I told you. But it's disappointing though. I think there was some reports in Australia saying he might be considering retirement, which could be a quite bit disappointing.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't be surprised. I think he was only there for Ange. I'd hate to see him go, but with the injury worries he had at the end of the season, he's not a young fella. I wish he was, but he's not. So, but I would probably put him as the favourite to leave Celtic right now that Ange is gone. But fingers crossed, not Hess.
Yeah, I think he's a good player to have in the squad as well with the experience he's got, like Australian international, over 50 caps, obviously played well in the Champions League, Premier League experience. So I think he'd be a good player to have around, but if he is considering retirement, then I guess fair. I
was going to say, we've had little bits of transfer rumours kind of already, but we've had a deal basically done, I think, this morning, so if Moy maybe does move on, midfield was an area where we're all talking about anyway, and it looks like Odin Thiago Holm is medical bound and he's going to be signing. It's definitely a name that's kind of been running around, Wonder Kid internet circles, for the last year or two. Not somebody I know much about, but it's definitely nice to see again, because I think one of the things we're worried about with the manager coming in, we're maybe worried about Moy's retirement, maybe something else, but still seeing the club charge on, regardless of all these other movements, is nice to see. And this guy does look promising, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, so I'll let you go. You go, Josh. You go.
No, he looks like a very talented wonder kid. Obviously, 20 years old. I think he had some opportunities to move to some big clubs. I think Bayern Munich was one of them a couple of years ago, but he decided to stay in Norway and seek a first-team football, which shows the character he is. That he's not going to be silly and move to a big club's academy where he's just going to stagnate potentially and not get many first-team football opportunities. I think that shows as well that he's going to play in the first team. That he's said in the past he only wants to leave Norway if he's getting minutes, so that's good. And I think as well the 100 players under the age of, I think it's 21, were nominated for the Golden Boy Award, which is from Tuttosport in Italy, and he was one of them nominated along with Sir Jude Bellingham. So an esteemed company there. Obviously I don't think he'll win the award, but no, I think it's a very shrewd move from Celtic. I think it's only £2.5 million. Hopefully if we can get him in a long-term deal, he's yet another young star to add to this ever-growing squad of young stars. Obviously, like O'Reilly that we have, is only 21 years old. So, it's interesting to see what Odin Thiago Holm can do. I think as well, the name, I read this on Wikipedia, so I don't know how true it is, but his middle name Thiago, he legally changed his name to that because of the player Thiago Alcantara. So, I'm not sure how true that is, but if he's any as good as Thiago Alcantara, then we'll take him at Celtic.
No, definitely. I think from what I've seen of the lad, obviously I'm not a Norwegian football enthusiast. However, from what I've seen of the compilations on YouTube, he sort of looks to me like the player we all thought Abelgard was going to be at Celtic. He's quite an astute midfielder. He loves winning the ball back. He can play really deep as a deep lying playmaker, but he can also get forward. So, I'm not obviously sold on him yet. I think, like you said, prospect kid, if we can get him in a multi-year deal, he's got all the time in the world to improve. I think he knows if he's making this move to Celtic, he's definitely getting minutes in Norway, but he knows he won't be guaranteed starting at Celtic. And I think that's a big thing for a young player to make a move like this. He knows he's coming to Celtic to fight for a position and he's not being, given it to him on a cherry platter, which you tend to get with a lot of players when they move to Celtic. They think they'll just walk into the starting lineup. Not true. As you say, with the squad we have right now, the depth is insane in the midfield. Literally, we have Callum McGregor at CDM, who is immovable. Reo Hatate, Matt O'Reilly, David Turnbull, he could get some form under Rodgers. But yeah, like you said, if he's anything like Thiago, by God, we'll take him. But I think this is certainly a space to watch with Thiago Holm. But hopefully, fingers crossed, because 2.5, it isn't cheap, but it also isn't breaking the bank. So hopefully a good investment.
Yeah. Well, I had to, the only thing I've kind of looked up for him is some of his main statistics since, being a professional player. And I thought when you kind of look, oh, he scored a couple of goals, he's got a wee assist or two, you think, maybe he's something a bit else. But the Thiago Alcantara comparison, like from his statistics, I could see where that comes from, because interceptions, defensive duels won, and then all the, in terms of the passing as well, it's passing statistics in his heat map, where he gets on the ball and where he travels with the ball is, like you say, like the impression I had of Big Abelgard was he was going to be this big defensive commander, sit in front of the back four, and he'll be able to take the ball from defence, maybe beat a man, and then, play the ball forward or, do that kind of thing. And obviously it wasn't really, we never seen that from him, but this guy seems to have the potential to be doing that sort of thing. So it's interesting as well, on top of, kind of how I brought this in, that the club have just charged on with this regardless, so is he maybe going to be filling someone's shoes? Are they expecting a transfer in the offing throughout the window for someone else in midfield that would ease that competition ever so slightly? I'm sure the competition isn't going to disappear altogether for the lad, because the squad's pretty deep, but it only takes one player to move on before you think, oh, he's that much closer to starting now, We mentioned Moy already. Another one I wanted to throw out there, somebody who I want to get your thoughts on if he could be a potential out, as it were, was Iwata, because he's not really featured too much. He is quite highly rated or so. We have just completed the deal. But again, if someone did come in for him, he's not one of these players that necessarily the fans or the squad has really revolved around. He hasn't, made his, he's not like a rock in the team, and it's not as if we're all in love with him, if you get me. So I just wanted to throw that one out there, as well as the Odin Holm chat, because it's maybe a similar position they would both try and get into ahead of with McGregor or whatever, which is going to be quite hard.
Well, yeah, you look at Iwata, and we had him playing centre-back at the end of the season, because obviously no Carter Vickers, but then also Kobayashi, he really didn't show anything. As I can't remember if he had some injury concerns with him, but the fact we were playing Iwata there at centre-back instead of him, who is a midfielder, it's really concerning. But I definitely do think he is a player that if like sort of like what's his name? The Donny we got from Gambo Osaka, the other Japanese fellow. Itaguchi, that's it. I think we could definitely draw a lot of comparisons to them in terms of how they've gone on at Celtic. But yeah, no, with such a stacked midfield, Iwata definitely could go. I think Kobayashi probably could go. I at this stage, I'd rather keep Welsh over him, mainly because Welsh is a junior at the club. In terms of talent, I don't think there's much between them, but I think Welsh sort of just gets Celtic a bit more, and he's much better to have. But yeah, I'm not too fussed on more players outgoing in terms of the like you said, if he goes, he goes. It's more really focusing on our talents, Jota, Abada, Kyogo, and like them front three. If Abada goes, we've got backups, but if Jota or Kyogo go, it's going to be so incredibly hard to replace them. Anyone who you look at Celtic and go, yeah, starting 11 player, I think if we lose any one of them, it's going to be very difficult to find a capable replacement, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the Rodgers appointment as well. Is I'm quite confident if he wants to keep these guys, they'll stay for him, to play under him for a year, guaranteed group stages. He's a Premier League manager, like in his own right, in terms of the level he'll bring to the club and training and whatever, because that's what a lot of the players are here for, is to be at Celtic to get that next level experience from wherever we've picked them up from, So I would hope that those best 11 guys we could definitely keep in. And just to kind of, in terms of any future guys we could be looking at, this morning we had some notifications of Hyeon-jun, I think is what it is, from Gangwon. And Aidan obviously picked up another little detail, which I'll let you throw into. But he's another winger. And it was one of the first things I thought about when Rodgers came in, is Rodgers always wants wingers that can dribble, that can beat people, and then have got some end products, they can do something at the end of it. And, Abada can do that. Jota can do that. Haksabanovic could do it in the month of November when he got Player of the Month. And then since then, it was kind of a lot of big chances missed and opportunities not taken. Forrest obviously still there. I'm pretty sure on his big multi-year contract, Brendan Rodgers will use Forrest quite similarly to probably how we've seen him used last year. But does that mean there's probably no space in the squad for probably one of the few men that can beat men on the dribble, which is Dyson Maeda?
I think that's an interesting point. Yeah, obviously, Dyson Maeda under Ange Postecoglou was at some points of the season one of our key players. He scored at Ibrox, was putting in big performances week in, week out, especially after the World Cup. He came back absolutely flying. Yeah, I think at Hibs away, he scored an absolute screamer. But I think Ange loved Daisen Maeda and Daisen Maeda loved Ange. I remember him calling him his father at one point as well. Obviously, brought him over from Yokohama. So I don't know what the relationship's going to be like between Rodgers and Maeda, if anything, some of that kind of chemistry between manager and player is going to be lost. But I think Maeda did come out and say a couple of days ago, after the Japan-Peru game where they won 4-1, I think he scored as well. That he's looking forward to competing in the squad next season, looking forward to another season. So I don't know if that would indicate he's staying. But unlike, I think we've seen under Rodgers and Rodgers' first season, he does love his wingers to cut inside and invert. Maeda loves to, I think, get to the byline and put crosses in. So I think there's a kind of contrasting style there. I'm not entirely sure if he will kind of impress as much under Rodgers as he did Ange. We never know though. But I think the interest in Hyeon-jun, if I'm saying that right, I may be totally butchering that. But I don't think that's a Rodgers sign. I think that's one of the ones that you were saying, Quinny, with the club itself is looking at signing players similar to the Odin Thiago Holm. These are probably players we had on transfer lists when Ange was in charge, and we've still got them and they look like promising signings. And obviously I read as well that in the report that initially linked him with Celtic that the fee would be lesser than the 3 million we paid for O. So yet again, not a big transfer fee we're paying for this guy, so you may as well, it's not like it's a £6-7 million winger you're bringing in, it's someone who's a young boy, once again looking to go on and progress in the squad. But I think as well, we're going to have a lot of players come back to loan. One of them is Mikey Johnston. Just bring him up. I don't know what he's done. He's doing all right for Ireland in the international stage, obviously switched allegiances, but his numbers out in Vitória de Guimarães, I'm butchering the name again, but they weren't the greatest. I think he got like 3 goals and 8 assists, 3 goals, 5 assists, something like that. But it was Rodgers, though, it should be noted. Rodgers gave him his senior Celtic debut when he was 17 years old. And he started them at Ibrox, I remember, when we lost 1-0 there up front. That wasn't the greatest afternoon, but it'll be interesting to see. We have a lot of depth in the wing departments. I think the signing of Hyeon-jun could be yet another addition there, if we are. But it would be interesting as well when we brought in Marianne Shved. I remember Rodgers saying in a press conference that, who's that? I don't know anything about him, yet we still bring him in. So hopefully we don't have that again, and hopefully Rodgers is at least signing off these deals and saying, right, okay, I'll have him in my squad. I'm happy to take him in.
Yeah, it's a good point. That I remember that happening with the Shved deal. It was a very, very confusing time to be a Celtic fan when that happened. But I did have some of those doubts. I will agree on Thiago Holm. Is this a player Rodgers wants to get into the squad, or is this more a view of the Celtic board to get in early and to bring in a player that might be of use of Rodgers? They're not too certain. But I want to go back to Daisen Maeda because I'll be honest, not a huge fan of him. I think if we wanted him to go to the Olympics and 1500 meter, he'd win it for us. You know what I mean? But he's got an absolute tank, but I don't think he'll have a spot on the wing at all in a Rodgers sort of formation. What is interesting, though, is when he did play at Yokohama under Ange, he did play a lot of striker there. And when he first came to Celtic, this was the period in that January transfer window when Kyogo was injured. So we had him starting, and I'm pretty sure it was his starting debut. He bagged a goal against Hibs in like the first 5 minutes or what have you. And as a striker at Celtic, really, his job isn't to dribble past players, to score everything himself. It's to be there in the right movements and to score a goal. And while his movement is not as good as Kyogo's, he has the pace, he has the silkiness. He could easily create some space for himself off the ball to be able to, 1-touch, 2-touch ball in the back of the net. So it could be interesting. We could see him moved into as more of a central player under Ange with this Korean... what's his name? Lee. Oh.
Hyeon-jun.
Yeah, Hyeon-jun. With him coming in, that will give us Jota, himself, Haksabanovic, Abada if he stays on the Mikey Johnston. Like you said, we're not short of depth for wingers, so Maeda could move into the central role, and honestly, I don't think it would be a bad thing. I'd be very interested to see it if someone like Kyogo was to touch wood, move on.
Yeah, maybe a case of, depends on who leaves in that sense. Abada was probably one of the more likely ones to leave in this window. But I think, again, Rodgers is somebody that could definitely develop him. And again, whenever you listen to Abada, he's very firmly like, I'm not ready. I want to develop more at Celtic. I've got more to do here. And obviously players are always going to say that publicly. They're never going to say, oh, fancy leaving this summer. Like kind of idea. But it is all paper talk and it is all speculation that takes Abada out of the club. It's not, he didn't even get any signals from the board. I know he's changed agent. There's maybe a contract offer that wasn't accepted, perhaps. But these things don't always need to be negative. They can be neutral. It's just a thing that happened. He was offered a contract and he didn't want to take it. Like it's just an event that happened maybe, and he can run that out a few different ways. But I think Jota is a really exciting prospect under Rodgers, along with Abada potentially. But a lot of this stuff, when we're thinking about the state of the current squad, it does rely, I think, on a lot of these guys staying, and we're only enhancing on top of them. And the rumoured transfer budget is like 35 million or something like that. I'm going to say that now. I think that's going to be gross spend. I don't think that's going to be net spend. I think there will be some outgoings that offset that. It's just a nice figure to kind of band out there into headlines and whatever. But if that is the level of commitment that's going out into this squad, we've kind of bounded about left back a little bit. We're kind of talking about forward positions, but for forward positions, we're kind of expecting maybe somebody would go out and then you're kind of then filling a spot that's been opened. But if you do have about 30 odd million sitting chilling, really, where do you spend it on this squad?
I think personally, I think centre back is a position that needs strengthened. We said it earlier with Kobayashi. I think when he came in at the end of the season, he wasn't too impressive in his performances as well. That leaves you with Carl Starfelt and Cameron Carter-Vickers, and obviously Carter-Vickers might not even be fit for the beginning of the season with his injury. So you're left there with Carl Starfelt on his own and someone like Kobayashi or Iwata or Stephen Welsh. And I wouldn't be too confident putting them in as a firm starter. So I think every successful team in football has 3 centre-backs that can replace each other and can play together and are first team quality players, first choice. Celtic, I think, personally only have 2 of them. It depends on who you're talking to, opinions and things like that. But Carl Starfelt and Cameron Carter-Vickers, I think we could do with another one. And if you have that amount of money, like you say, Quinny, being available, why not go and invest in someone who can come in and play there? Especially, I think, obviously Kobayashi's left-footed, but I can't see him coming in under Rodgers and impressing. You never know, though. That might have just been a bad spell for him. Might have had some personal issues, we don't know. However, I think a left-footed first team, first choice quality centre-back could be something we look at. I think potentially Joe Hart at the end of last season, I think he cost us quite a few goals at some points, potentially maybe a goalkeeper if someone becomes available that suits Brendan Rodgers' play style that could be all right for us, is the age profile we want, is the type of person we want as well. I guess you never know, but if we have money, you're not going to just leave it and we'll not spend it, we're happy with the squad we've bought. You may as well go and improve the squad and see what we can do and improve on guys like Kobayashi, improve on guys like Joe Hart. Like, you may as well just go and spend big. We're trying to progress in Europe. We haven't won a European knockout tie in my lifetime. I really want to see Celtic do that in the next couple of seasons, if not this season. And I think part of having to do that is improving the squad and seeing what we can do with the money.
No, I definitely agree. I think centre back, I'm still quite annoyed we were never able to hang on to Moritz Jens. I thought Moritz Jens at the start of the season was. I was at the start of the season. I was saying Moritz Jens over Starfelt every single day of the week. I would have been happy to go throughout the rest of the season with them two. Obviously, things didn't go that way. Carl Starfelt has really, really settled into that role. Odd bum scare here and there. He's very unorthodox. We can all agree that, but he definitely gets the job done. But I think it's a good sign with someone like Moritz Jens that we brought him in. It means there's other centre backs out there we can certainly bring in. I agree with you 100%, Josh. I would only trust Starfelt and Carter-Vickers to be there in front of the goalie right now. And speaking of goalie as well, I don't think we actually have to go out and get a goalie. I think we have a perfectly capable and good goalkeeper in Ben Siegrist. I think 100% he could take the starting role at Celtic. He always caused us problems when he was at Dundee United. So I'd back him if we were to, not put that money into goalkeeper. If we do go and get one, sure. But he's my pick to be our number one next season. And with a $35 million war chest, it's pretty much limitless considering how much Celtic spend on deals. I think our record's still odds on Edouard, and we paid, upwards of $9 million for him. That's just under 4 Edouards. So if we can do anything like that, I'll be so happy. Moussa Dembele, he's a free agent now. Never say never.
Never say never, indeed. The Dembele stuff has come up, and I think there was somebody else. It was a former player that got a half link. But I thought if there's any former player in line with both what you guys are saying, I'd be going and trying to get Christopher Ayer back out of Brentford.
Ooh, I would, in a minute, I would take Christopher Ayer back. I think he has his injury troubles, but obviously I believe it was Rodgers who initially gave him that chance after he came back from his loan at Kilmarnock, and he absolutely excelled under both Rodgers and Neil Lennon. I think as well in the COVID season, don't want to mention that, get a bit of PTSD, but he was one of our standout players, I believe, in that season. I think did he not get played? He might have got Player of the Year for his the club's own awards. I would take Christopher Ayer back in a minute. I think he would comfortably fit into the side at centre back. Obviously, we know he can operate at right back as well. We've seen him gallivanting up and down that side. I would absolutely in a minute take Christopher Ayer. He was one of my favourite players back in the day, so I'd take him.
Yeah. That's also a bit of wishful thinking, but just what I wanted to throw out at you for sure. I think he's right. I think it makes 100% sense to get a goalkeeper in this window if the right kind of one is available, and again, maybe just to throw a name just out there into anyone's ear who's listening to this. St. Pauli conceded 39 goals last season. Their goalkeeper is 26-27. His name is Nicola Vasile, and he's got incredible statistics for anyone who likes any fashion of goalkeeper. He saves, he passes. He's a good guy. They didn't get promoted. He's the Bosnian number 2. And it's one of those ones where, he could be a wee cheeky one. And also St. Pauli, I don't think we'd mind shopping there, would we? For obvious reasons, give them the money kind of thing. I think centre-back makes a lot of sense. I do think, like we've mentioned a few times, maybe left-back is on the menu somehow. But for me, otherwise, we would all probably fear Abada transfers in a window or two, whether it's this one or not, is probably up for discussion. But right wing does lack a bit of distinct quality on it in terms of if we were to run through the depth chart of potential options there. You get to Forrest and Johnston quite quickly on that side of the pitch, So I think a right winger or a player who can play on the right wing in some extent, maybe it's a dual kind of position, maybe somebody can play striker, like we're talking about with Dyson or Haksabanovic, who wants to play a bit more central, maybe granted in midfield, but somebody who can quite actively be an effective right winger might be something that comes into this as well, perhaps.
I think one player who immediately comes to mind when you say could play right wing and centre forward is Aberdeen's Duke. I think he would be an incredible signing for us. A lot of people saying he's one of the best players in Scottish football outside the 2 big Glasgow sides this season, so I think he could be a decent addition. Aberdeen would probably ask for a lot of money because I believe they need to pay back Benfica 50% of what they get for Duke, so they're not going to let him go lightly. But if we've got the money, he knows the league. He's impressed in the league already in a lesser side. You never know if he can make the step up, though. I think as well in goalkeeper, a couple of people have mentioned Kieran Kelleher of Liverpool, but I think the wages are probably, and the fee would probably be an issue there, so I don't know if he's probably out of our range, but that St. Pauli boy could be a name to watch. Yeah.
I prefer somebody that's maybe played a bit more than the Kelleher shouts, and I think there's another kind of up and coming number 2 young kid somewhere. I forget who it was, but I want somebody who're throwing him in the group stages. You know what I mean? I want to see somebody that has been in the firing line. Can make saves, can make it happen. For real. Not just this guy's an Ireland international and he plays for Liverpool, and we're Celtic and we like Ireland internationals that play for Liverpool or something. I don't know, but but no, a proper addition. That's just the first name that pops into my head. There's a couple of guys out there, and if we've got that kind of budget, then a good goalkeeper is available. But then it's. And again, like somebody said this to me about Rodgers, where he got a lot out of Kasper Schmeichel when he went to Leicester, and I don't think that relationship ended particularly well necessarily. He did give Craig Gordon, a bit of a life at Celtic as well. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that he does run with Hart. And, it's one of those ones where I think if we improve the defence, we can maybe, you can maybe then get the extra season out of Hart, because again, looking at our Champions League campaign, the defence was in tatters the whole group stages, really. So, it's one of those ones where if the defence is improved, maybe the goalkeeper gets saved ever so slightly.
I think as well, another position you could look at is, obviously said Aiden there, you could put Maeda in as the striker role. I think Kyogo and I think if one of them gets injured, you're just relying on the other one. Obviously said Maeda could operate there, but maybe having another striking option. Obviously, you'd want someone, like you said, Quinny, who's probably versatile, can play on maybe one of the flanks or even in a deeper role. But just having someone extra in there who we know is reliable at striker, I think could be a good shout. But obviously you've got Maeda, so maybe if Maeda goes, you probably look at bringing in someone else who can play striker or out wide. But that could be one to keep an eye on. Obviously said Dembele. I'd love to see the big man back.
Oh no! If Dembele came back, it'd be incredible, But I think we're talking about all these players who could leave. You look at most players who we would say go out the door at Celtic. I think you're looking at we'd either be breaking even or making profit on, I'd say, at least 75% of them. And with that, if we are talking like it's a gross transfer budget, that number's just going to keep going up and up. Champions League football. Well, Ange wasn't, the best in Champions League, best in Europe, didn't do too well. Got to remember, when Rodgers managed Celtic, the squad, I wouldn't say it was as good as it is now, but we were knocking off teams in Europe. We were actually getting results. We're still the only team Pep Guardiola's City has faced and has never beat. So, I don't know, it's a little fun trivia fact there, but I think, it's really hard to say what to do with this squad, especially because I haven't recently been researching players to bring in. It's really hard for me to have an idea of what can happen with this squad because it's really good right now. It is. It's really good. But it did show as well back end of last season, we always talked about how good the depth was. We show the depth. It wasn't as good as we thought it was. Players like Iwata, players like Kobayashi, the backups weren't as good as we thought they were going to be. But, it really is what it is. I think with Rodgers coming in, he's gonna see this happen. He's gonna implement his new style of football. I'm pretty certain Celtic will go back to playing not as fast a football. Rodgers will 100% slow down this tempo. So what will that do for the players who like to play a lot faster? I don't know. Will it bring them down a notch or will it improve them? We'll have to see. But if he knows it's not working with the players he has, he'll make those decisions and he'll get rid of them because he 100% has the backing of the board, which is really important. We must stress this. He 100% has the backing of the board. He's the first manager since he left, or I think first manager since Ronnie Dyler to not be put on a 12-month rolling contract. He's been given that solidarity of 3 years. And he's been promised a hell of a lot of things, including this transfer budget. So the backing of the board is certainly there. And I think, like we mentioned right at the start of the video, we have to back him as fans now so he can get the work done at Celtic as he did back when he was here originally.
You never want to worry too much about the ones that could go out. And it's all about, enhancing the squad in this kind of window. We've kind of skirted around it a little bit, right? We've not really mentioned Kyogo too much, not really mentioned Hatate too much. We spoke about O'Reilly a wee bit, right? But who's the one player that could leave that we really don't want to leave? Really? Who makes the biggest difference out leaving? Is it maybe Jota? He's not even been mentioned really in any of this discussion either, Who would make the biggest? Because we've mentioned it a little bit also already that some of these guys, if they left, are super hard to really replace and upgrade on,
In terms of that, you'd definitely looking at either Jota or Kyogo. You'd probably miss the most. I think maybe even you could argue Cameron Carter-Vickers at the back. I think the stability he brings is unmatched by any centre-back we've had in the past number of years. I think as well as leadership qualities, just the security. I think every Celtic fan, when you have Carter-Vickers in the ball, you're absolutely fine. You're like, oh, he's not going to make a mistake. Whereas when Starfelt's in the ball, you have that wee bit in the back of your head where like, oh, he could have a wee moment here. he gives it away. However, I think in attack, definitely Jota or Kyogo. If you look at what Kyogo's done for us in cup finals, he has 5 goals in 3 cup finals. And obviously he started scoring in derbies as well, same as Jota. They're both big game players, and their numbers throughout the season are just very, very impressive. So I don't think we'd want to lose either of them, but I think if the right money came in for Celtic as a club, I think you could potentially see one of them go if you get something like 30, 35 million if you break Celtic's record fee, which is I think 25 million for Kieran Tierney. So if you get that amount of money, I think those in the hierarchy of the club would find it hard to turn down. But it's about if we could, it's very hard if we could get a valid replacement for one of them if they go. I think the player I would not want to leave is Kyogo. I would not want him to leave out of anyone.
Yeah, I got to agree with that. I think it's kind of a blessing in disguise, maybe, since Ange has gone to Spurs. We literally signed Cameron Carter-Vickers from Spurs a year ago. I don't think there's any chance he will go back now. So I think I think if we lost Cameron Carter-Vickers, we're stuffed. We're completely stuffed. He'd be a massive loss. I don't think we'll find another one like him. He's been I pretty much only watched Celtic highlights back when Van Dijk was at Celtic, right? I would only have time to watch. I was so young, right? But from what my dad tells me, Carter-Vickers is the safest centre-back he's seen since Van Dijk. And from what I've seen, watching past games, it's pretty true. But then you move forward into the midfield. Callum McGregor, if he wasn't our captain and he wasn't a boyhood Celtic player, if we lost him, it'd be monumental, but we don't even have to talk about that because it's not happening. Reo Hatate, honestly, I love him. I think he is I'll say Callum McGregor is the heart of Celtic's midfield, but Rio's definitely the engine. If we lost him, I'll be pretty upset, but I'm not going to be we should have done more to keep him. I think he's maybe unpopular. I think he's replaceable. In terms of players we could bring in, I certainly think another player could come in and do as well of a job. But you go to the forwards, Jota and Kyogo. Kyogo, like you said, Josh, his numbers this season have been absolutely unreal. The amount of games he's won us just by his ability is crazy. We go back to last season, even the cup final against Hibs. Sure, he got both the assists to him were also crazy, but that first one straight off kickoff where he's on the tightest angle and he puts it in with his left foot. Is not doing that. He's a really special player. And Jota, some of the flair he possesses, the chip at Celtic Park over Alan McGregor was phenomenal. It literally won Celtic's goal of the season. If we were to lose them two, I think it's much more detrimental than losing someone like Reo Hatate. But like you said, if the money comes in, it's going to be hard to say no. Kyogo's only 28, I believe, arguably in his prime years. If we weren't to get a fee more than, I'll say, realistically, over 22 million, I wouldn't want Celtic to take it. I don't know how the board would feel about it. We saw players like Edouard leave for less than that when he was really good, but I think certainly if Kyogo was to go, we'd be in a very sticky situation because I said it earlier, I don't really rate O, and it's going to be so incredibly hard to find another player like Kyogo, to be honest. Jota, I'm sure we could go to Portugal and find another Ronaldo-esque player. No, but it's on Kyogo. I think, I agree 100% with Josh. Kyogo is the man, and if we were to lose him, heartbroken.
Yeah, because he's got that knack for scoring, of course, but he's got the quality of the finish. He's got he's got that sniff of just being in the right place at the right time. Great energy, great work ethic in him. And like we've all been saying for this season, Kyogo, he is the guy right now, So it's not even just, you could find somebody else to score 30 goals a season. We probably could go and get Gary Hooper to do that, right? But it's Kyogo, he is that little bit different, that little bit magic that gives you that next level potential for the bigger games that we have. And along with Jota, I think you're spot on. Hatate, but I think is probably one of those ones that is probably much easier to replace. And when you were talking there, I was getting a wee flashback to listening to Steve Clark and Callum McGregor. Steve Clark, Callum McGregor quote came into my mind from the other night where he's talking about the Scotland game, and like in the home match, he wanted to play McGregor further forward. And we've spoken about Ange hoping to try and get McGregor further forward with signing other players that can play deeper, for example. So I wonder if, you just sell Hatate and you give McGregor that job, and then you play somebody else a bit deeper, maybe Iwata, maybe somebody else comes in. Yeah. But I think, quite easily, like Rio could just disappear off the squad. And that Thiago Odin Holm, if you look at his heat map, it's a spitting image of Reo Hatate's as well, in terms of where he covers the pitch. So maybe Hatate is a foregone conclusion, perhaps.
Maybe, I think as well, what you're saying with McGregor getting played further forward, that's where he played under Rodgers the first time around. He was in that 8 kind of role. You obviously had Scott Brown sitting deep. So maybe if we have a player that's willing to do that job, what Brown did, maybe you get a McGregor in and he does what he does, getting that third man, runs into the box, finishing. We've seen him score a lot of goals like that against Rangers, I believe, in cup semi-finals. I don't know, one of the most satisfying goals I've ever seen, where Dembele takes it down, cuts it back, McGregor pass it into the bottom corner. And I think McGregor's such a great, talented footballer. His all-round game is just amazing. And I think the fact he can play both those roles to the highest standard in Scotland, I think he's the best footballer in Scotland, is Callum McGregor, all-round. So I believe definitely he could go further forward and you get someone else sitting, and McGregor shows what he can do.
No, I definitely agree, It's a testament to McGregor as well, because he is just that good. And I honestly still think he is slightly underappreciated from not just Celtic fans, but like Scotland fans in general. The work he does it really does go unnoticed. And I think, if we do move him further upfield, I honestly wouldn't have an issue with it. He shows he can score goals. He shows he can track back, and he shows he'll play with 110% intensity for a full 90 minutes and even extra time in cup matches, And if Rodgers does play him further upfield, like you said, Thiago Holm, he could easily play a bit deeper, Iwata, if, he finds his shit, he can play a bit deeper. Or we just bring in someone else, Victor Wanyama, link up with Alistair Johnston again, Maybe he's a bit, maybe it's just a fever dream, I don't know, but it would be nice, that's ideally for me, that would be a player like Wanyama we could bring in, if also obviously hypothetically, if Rio was to go, whether that be Spurs or Brighton or wherever, we move Callum McGregor a bit further upfield, let him have a bit more attacking freedom, bring in just some no-nonsense, big old CDM who will, like Scott Brown, for example. Obviously, there's not another Scott Brown, but a player in that mould.
Yeah, could be a play for sure. I think, it's been a great one. It's been lots of stuff to kind of go over and think about, certainly. And I think once we get the Rodgers press conference on Friday, this Thiago Odin Holm deal gets kind of done, we will then, I think, over the weekend and then into Monday, Tuesday, we'll probably start to get the early vibrations, the early sounds of who does Rodgers fancy or not, and maybe even just other targets. Because again, part of the thing that dematerialised for him at Leicester was they didn't want to spend any more money. They didn't have any more money to spend, whatever, right? And a bit of the criticism that came Rodgers' way was a bit of the checkbook manager kind of stuff. But he has got a target list that he's built at Leicester, undoubtedly, that didn't get actioned to some extent. So it'll be really interesting to see some of those little, because we had that with Rodgers the first time, it felt like, with Dembele and a few other kind of players. We had it with Ange. But when a manager comes in, some of those sneaky guys that they know, this is a great, this guy, his contract's up in the summer. I've been watching him all year. Let's just get him in the now. So I think we could get some exciting moves pretty quickly, because we don't need to worry about qualifiers. We just need to have a nice steady pre-season, go and tour around the world and go see all the Celtic fans here, there and everywhere. And then, flag day, get the flag up, get the party started and go at it. So Rodgers in his other seasons at Celtic, we had qualifiers. We always had stuff to deal with. We've always had Willie, won't he, who's coming, who's going, who needs to replace him. When we would do this kind of chat about looking at a squad, I made jokes about it earlier. So many of the squads were always debatable. Like, is this guy good enough? Is this guy past it? is this guy going to stay? Whereas now, like I say, it just feels like onwards and upwards, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Josh, it's been great seeing you again, mate.
Aye, cheers for having us on again. Some good chat today. Good to get going ahead of the new season.
I definitely think, Aidan, you put in a man of the match performance for us today, the Aussie boy on YouTube. And again, the link to the channel is in the description of the video below to go and catch Aidan and all his content. But mate, it's been great chatting with you, and thanks a lot for coming on.
No, thank you guys so much for having me on. I think it was really good. It's always a blast being able to talk about Celtic with other like-minded Celtic fans, and I'd love to come back on again, and fingers crossed, steady pre-season, good health to everyone in the squad, good health to you guys, and I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much.
And hail, hail. We'll see you next week.
Hail, hail.